So, RJ, before you started on this project, what did Martha Stewart mean to you?
A lot, but not much. I mean, a lot as a figure in the culture, somebody who I was aware of. I was not a subscriber to her magazine, nor was I a watcher of her show, but I was, of course, aware of the arc and of her presence and the journey. And I remember thinking, when it was announced that Mark Burnett had made a deal with her while she was in prison and there were multiple shows planned, I remember thinking, oh, that Mark Burnett, he's so smart. He's, he figured he knows she'll be back, and he knows she'll be back with thunder. And but other than that, that's what I knew. And the origin story of this project is that my wife and I were having dinner with a friend. We were out in Montauk, where we go for a couple of weeks every summer with our family, and the friend called that afternoon and said, Martha Stewart wants to join us for dinner. Is that okay? And I'm like, sure. Is she cooking? Is she going to bring? But she wasn't. So and we met that night and chatted, and it was clear to me that this was something that was on her mind, making a film, and she was ready to tell her story. You know how important that is, and she had a remarkable story to tell. Everything she told me about her life was kind of counterintuitive to what I would have. It wasn't a life of privilege, a background of privilege. It was a working class background. She went to work young to help feed her family. All of those things that you learn in the film, I learned that night, and this complicated relationship with her dad. And anyway, it became instantly intriguing to me and exciting. I thought, here's a story of American womanhood over the last part of the 20th century, the first part of the 21st century, and she agreed.
So one of the reasons she's such a success is because she has taken charge of so many things, and that can be a tricky relationship for a documentary filmmaker. So what was that like?
Awesome. Well, we agreed that night, by the way. We discussed, I don't want to say we agreed because we didn't agree to necessarily make a movie that night, but we discussed the fact that were we to make a movie, I would have to have final cut, that's the way that, that I work. And she embraced that immediately. So there was that. And there was that understanding, but she's Martha. And, as with any subject, you need to kind of go into the grain of where the possibilities are. And she was very clear. And I became very clear about the fact that Martha is not somebody who is prone to self-reflection. This is a woman who is charging part of her success. Not only is the perfectionism and the control, but the fact that it's the future that excites her. She's always forging forward. Was one of the first business people to really understand the power of synergy. One of the first people to really understand the power of the personal brand. They're on and on and on. She saw all of these things. Her magazine was the first magazine that had an iPad version. There were so many examples of this, and part and parcel with that is not a lot of dwelling on the past, and a certain. And forget therapy. I mean, she and during the interview, I ended up interviewing her multiple times to kind of acclimate her to the process and to address that lack of natural comfort. But she kept on saying to me, I've never been a day in therapy in my life, and now R.J. Cutler thinks he's going to put me in the chair. So it was all of that, and I kind of did.
And so what was that process like? I mean, we see like a moment in the clip where, you're kind of challenging her a little bit on her version of her past.
It was very engaged, in a way, one of the things we decided early on in the making of the film was that Martha would be the only, though we would interview dozens of people, because there are so many points of view and so many chapters to her life. Martha would be the only one who was actually on camera. And this kind of gave her a privileged position, which is something I wanted her to have. For all the times that Martha Stewart's story has been told, never had it been told by her. So here she was in the middle of it. But one of the other things that did was kind of foreground her as a complicated narrator. One might even say an unreliable narrator, somebody who, and so the experience of engaging with her included that, and it was okay. There was a kind of complexity to her, the way she was presenting truth and fact, and when she wanted to resist it, and when she would. I don't know if there's a point in the trailer about this, but there's a key moment in the film where I'm asking her about her divorce, and she really doesn't want to talk about it, and kind of sloughs me off and says, "I gave you the letters, just use them." And there we go into the letters, and it opens up this really emotional and powerful and vulnerable verite moment, because you're not only hearing her words, you're seeing her, the way she wrote these different letters to her husband when they were going through their divorce. So it was all very kind of engaged and exciting, to be honest. It was I love chatting with her. I always love chatting with her, even when she's being particularly mean. She tends to be most mean in texts, because she loves to go on. At early in the morning.
When the film came out, she gave a half-hour interview to the New York Times detailing all the things that she didn't like about it. And I even wondered at that moment if her being so savvy about the press, if she was giving that interview intentionally to make people want to see the film.
Well, whatever would make you think that? I did get a text that night saying they're having watch parties in my neighborhood! ! So, but she had her opinion. Listen, it's to be expected that if Martha Stewart were to have made the film and to have directed the film, it would be a different film. And bless her. I said this to her so many times. This film was. We were able to make this film because Martha Stewart was courageous enough to let us tell her story and to trust us to tell her story. And in doing that, she made the film possible. And I have nothing but gratitude and empathy for that. And sure, this person who's used to being so in control of everything would have a hard time seeing somebody else's version of events or a film about them, and she did, but she has so come round since those days, and has been really a great supporter of the film.
What are some of the conversations you've had since then? I mean, what do you think kind of resonates for her from this experience of it being out there?
The impact that it's had on, particularly on young women who tell her, she says she now is recognized in a way that she wasn't before, which is surprising to me, because I think she was one of the most recognizable figures in a way. But she'll say people will call out to her from cars and things like that. But it's really the impact on young women who tell her that they're inspired by her story and by her perseverance and by the fact that, it's a man's world, and you got to contend with that. And she has contended with it at every step of her life, and with great success. I mean, you look at the film; it's a film about a series of extraordinary triumphs, every single one of which is resisted by a patriarchal figure. A time and again, she's told she's wrong. It won't happen. We don't. Even the publisher of her first book I wanted a cookbook with, a black and white cookbook with recipes. And she said, no, I'm going to make the most beautiful book on entertaining that's ever been made, and I'm going to be at the center of it. And he didn't understand, but she gave him two choices: to either do it her way or don't do it at all. She went to Condé Nast to do Martha Stewart Living, the magazine, and they did what they do there, which is a kind of pilot issue, and the pilot issue was enormously successful. And Cy Newhouse, the head of Condé Nast, said to her, "Okay, what are we going to call it?" And she said, "Martha Stewart Living." He said, "No, no, no. We have to call it Condé Nast Living. We can't." And she said, "Okay, see you later." And off she went to Time Warner, and she made her magazine called Martha Stewart Living. And this is who she is every step of the way. So the fact that young women see this movie and are inspired by her, by this aspect of who she is, it means a tremendous amount to her.
RJ, you've been in this world of documentary for over 30 years. The first film, The War Room, came out in theaters. And what I've always admired about your career is, you've tried to, follow the river of where things go. When network television was doing things, you were doing things on network television, and now you've got your own company and working with multiple different platforms on multiple big subjects. How do you? I mean, the documentary world feels in a kind of fragile state these days, and I wonder how you look at it with all the experience you have.
Well, you've been there most of the way, so you've seen it as well. I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. It's and the thing I'm most optimistic about is the industriousness of my peers and my fellow documentary filmmakers. I mean, I learned, as you know, you mentioned The War Room. The directors of The War Room were D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hedges. I learned at the feet of the masters. I learned from the pioneers. And one of the things I learned was that, you got to come at this. We are, in a way, outsiders to the entertainment industry. And we are people who have to find new ways in, and we always have. The War Room, nobody wanted to distribute The War Room. It was only October Films, this little startup company run by Bingham Ray and a few of his colleagues, who saw opportunity, and they gave us nothing for it. But it ran in theaters for months and months and months. When the September issue came out in 2008, we went to Sundance, and nobody wanted it. It was the same thing, similar thing. And this is what the documentary world is. So you have to find ways, you have to find other ways and other paths. And I believe that that's what we're seeing happen now as well. You have to step back from it and realize that marketplace is cyclical. We had a great boom with the streamers. It was a wonderful run for a while, but you can't look at that as the finite period. I think one of the things that 30 years of doing this gives you the advantage of is to have that perspective and to see there have been ups and there have been downs, and like these times that I just mentioned, and there have been boom times, and you got to kind of roll with it. So as I say, I have enormous faith not only in the kind of perseverance and craftiness of my colleagues, but also in the artistry, most of all in the artistry. And so the what streamers want and don't want and are buying or not buying aside, we are still in a period of incredible creative, fertile creativity. And it's thrilling every year, as you know. Every year, you're showing amazing films and programming amazing films. Doc NYC is having there's Tribeca's going on now, and all of the festivals, what we see at Sundance are it's nothing but a cause for celebration and inspiration. Even though, look, it's still tough. There are gonna be times when it's gonna be tough. So we do our best to kind of keep our heads down and work, keep on working. At This Machine, which is the company you mentioned, we try to support filmmakers as much as we can. I direct maybe a third of the projects we do, and other filmmakers do the others. So we're doing our best to support the community. And that's who we are. That's who documentary filmmakers are.
RJ, thank you for this film. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
I wore red shoes for you. Good to see you.